Welcome back to the show. Super excited to have you guys here. We have a fun episode today. This is kind of a collection of thoughts that I've posted to our Facebook group over the last week that I've just kind of been working on kind of in my head over the last, 6 to 7 months of the year. I'm excited to share them with you guys today. And they've kind of been born out of, 2023 has been a very interesting year from a business perspective, personal perspective, life in general, the world, the economy. It's been a very strange year in the fact that a lot of things that we've kind of been waiting on to happen have happened. A lot of things that we thought were going to happen didn't happen. Unexpected results, maybe more challenges than expected in some areas, maybe less challenges in others. And so just a lot of things that I've been thinking about, that kind of the way I've processed the year, I've been sharing, and they've gotten some good kind of feedback in our kind of Facebook group, which shameless plug, go to Facebook and search up Macros Inc., join our community of almost 500,000 people. It's a ton of fun. We give a lot of value there. But just wanted to share some of those things with you because I think there's a lot of really good insights. So the first one is this idea of the biggest source of your frustrations in life is often that your expectations are not matching your reality. And the real story here is your expectations are basically completely made up, right? Most of us have expectations that the process of transforming your body, building a business, creating a great relationship with your spouse, building a life that you're proud of is going to be pretty straightforward, and that you won't have periods where kind of life in general gets in the way. And the question that I ask is that a reasonable expectation, right? Is it reasonable to assume that you won't have a family emergency that you have to deal with, where you have to drop your business, everything else, your gym, fitness routine, etc.? Is it reasonable to assume that you won't have an injury at some point that keeps you out of the gym? Is it reasonable to assume you won't have parties to attend to where you can't control the food? Is it reasonable to assume that you're going to be perfect in a relationship with your spouse? Is it reasonable to assume that your spouse is going to be perfect in the relationship with you? No, right? None of that is reasonable. Yet we all kind of set those expectations. And the question is, why do we do that? Why do we set those expectations? The answer is because that is part of being human. Like that's just part of being a human being and kind of having this idea of what we want things to be, because that's how we operate, right? We kind of have this projection of what we assume the world's going to be. So think about it this way, is when you get frustrated about things not going your way, realize that the frustration is actually just because your expectations and reality are not aligning. And you can't change reality, but you can change your attitude toward it. Now, note very specifically, I didn't say change your expectations, because I want you to dream big. I want you to go chase that dream that you may think is unattainable. So don't change your expectations. You can't change reality, but what you can change is your attitude when we have this clash between reality and expectations. So you kind of just have to let it be and really keep moving forward and keep doing the work. The next one that kind of really dovetails directly into this is this idea is hard is what it is. And this is something that I learned this lesson a long time ago, and I learned it first in high school. And if you guys have ever heard the story of my basketball career, I think it's on one of these episodes. But that was a really difficult period of my life. And then in my early 20s, I went through another really difficult period where I basically could barely afford food, couldn't afford heat, was in grad school, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But it was just a really difficult period. And this idea, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, of hard is what it is. And somebody else, I think it was Alex Hormozy, had a saying on this, and I think his was, this is what hard feels like. And the way that I kind of encapsulated it was, hard is what it is, and this is kind of based on a conversation. I'm going to encapsulate this in a story for you guys that I had working with a client about 6 to 7 years ago. So this is about 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago. I was working with a client who was trying to lose around 100 pounds or so. And we got to around the 40, 50 pound mark. So we were maybe, 40% halfway there. And we had a check-in call, but she said something like the following. She said, I think it was like, I feel like I hit a wall the last few weeks. I'm hungry a lot. I don't feel motivated anymore to go to the gym. I have low energy, and I just feel like everything is really hard right now. And I kind of sat with that for a minute. And if you've ever had like a difficult conversation with me, or maybe not difficult, but just like an in-depth conversation, I sit with things quite a bit. Like I don't mind the uncomfortable silence. I don't have to respond right away. So I kind of sat for a minute or two, just kind of processing what she said. And I responded to her and I said, do you remember our first consult when you said that you were ready to do the hard work and to finally get where you wanted to go? And she replied, she said, yes, 100% remember that call. And so I replied, I kind of sat back and I said, now we've hit the part that is really hard, right? Like now you're seeing what hard actually feels like what it is to experience things being hard. We're in the part of that journey where your reality is now finally meeting the expectations you had. So for the first time, right, with that perspective, is this hard you are feeling right now good or is it bad? To which she replied, honestly, I don't really think it's either. It sort of just is. Like it's not good or bad. It just is what it is. To which I kind of told her, exactly right. It's not good or bad. Hard isn't good or bad. You're just at the point you expect it to be at, and you're finally feeling what it's like. So instead of fighting that, just feel it. Learn what it's like. Use that as your superpower. Just let it be, right? Hard is hard. It is what it is. Now, don't let hard be the goal or the outcome or good or bad. It sort of just is what it is. And it's okay if hard feels really tough sometimes. That feeling is normal and it's part of the process. But don't let that change your perspective to good or bad, right? If you wake up and you don't want to go to the gym and it sucks, that's not bad. It's the process. If you're sore, it's not bad. It's part of the process. If you get to the point where you feel like you've done a ton of work and you're kind of feeling a little bit like, oh my God, this is really tough, welcome to the game, kids. Like that is what it is. But that's not bad. It's not good. It just kind of is, right? And if you can learn to sit with it and lean into it, you can really start to realize that it's okay. It's okay to feel like that. And I think that becomes a superpower. So this kind of dovetails into another concept of something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Whenever I kind of run into periods of uncertainty, this is something that I always just kind of repeat in my mind back to myself. And so this kind of relates to an early story is I remember when I quit my full-time job that I spent a decade working to get, basically. I mean, I went to undergrad, grad school, second grad school, postdoc, and then got my first like real big boy job as an academic scientist at a hospital, like a faculty scientist. And kind of when I just kind of quit and I went on my own, I had a bunch of people in my life kind of say, what happens if you lose all your money? Like what happens if the businesses go under? What happens if you can't pay your mortgage? What happens if you have to sell your house and move into your parents' basement and it just doesn't work? And thank God I was young at that time and, had enough, nothing matters. I'm still young, kind of left in my brain, to which I kind of said, honestly, that probably will happen. Like it's very likely that I just don't make it, right? Most businesses fail. And I had a couple businesses fail. Luckily, some took off. But, I kind of said, that'll probably happen. But as long as I pick up the skills along the way that make sure I can always start again, but with more skills and a shorter learning curve the second time, I'll be okay. I can just speed up that learning curve because if I just keep going, eventually I'm going to figure it out, right? If I just have to roll a 12 on the dice, if I roll the dice 100 times, eventually I'm going to roll a 12. So now take that and apply that to kind of, your life, your journey is nothing's a failure unless you didn't learn from it, and you're not going to get better the second time. And I think that's a really important thing for kind of people to really understand. And that kind of leads to the next concept of don't underestimate the value of time. So if we kind of stack these lessons up, right? The first one is frustration comes from reality not meeting expectations. Hard is what it is, right? You haven't really failed unless you didn't learn, right? And part of the process of failure, of like actually failing, quote unquote, is you learn and then the next cycle it repeats itself, but you get better faster. And so this brings me to this idea of don't underestimate the value of time. And I was playing basketball. Last week. I also played last night. Didn't play that great. Sometimes that happens. I was playing basketball last week, and one of the guys was there, and he was just kind of asking me some advice on how to get better. And so I kind of spent a few minutes just showing him some pointers. We were playing a bunch of 5-on-5 games, and after the end, he just kind of came over and said, like, hey, saw a couple of things you did out there. Not really like, I don't understand how you make those decisions, how you see those things. So he kind of said, like, hey, how did you learn this stuff? And my immediate response, because I'm now at the age where I'm the oldest guy who plays pickup, which is kind of crazy at 35. But I just kind of told him, I was like, it's amazing the things you learn after 23 years of doing something, right? I've been playing fairly competitively since I was 12, so that's 23 years now. And it's amazing, like, if every year, every 6 months, every quarter, you stack a new skill, right? Basketball terms, say when I was 12, I learned how to, defend the show on a pick and roll. Then when I was 13, I learned how to defend on the roll side of the pick and roll. And then when I was 14, I learned how to do, it's like those things just keep stacking up. And after 23 years, you learn a lot. And so in many ways, the time that you spend on a singular journey is the most valuable thing that you have. Because you get to fail, you get to repeat, you get to learn faster, you get to develop skills. And every time you do that, you just keep learning. And that time compounded over and over and over and over and over, you just keep getting better. Now, in basketball, as you get older, your athleticism drops, your ability to do some of the things you used to do goes away, right? In business, your ability to fail and start over, you may get better, but you have less time to build, right? When you start when you're 20, when you start a business when you're 30, when you start a business when you're 40, when you start a business when you're 50, every time you do that, you have less time. So that means the time that you spend is the most valuable thing you have. So don't think about every year sprint of your life as a long time to try to accomplish something. Think about it as the start of a journey of accumulating decades of knowledge and skills, because that's realistically what you're doing. And so when I think about, what the goal of all this actually is, whether it's building a business, transforming your body, building relationships, is here's the actual goal. Love the life you live. When we think about the journey that we're all on, it's easy to think about six-pack abs, looking perfect in that outfit, squatting 400 pounds, being the pinnacle of fitness, eating perfectly, optimizing your life to be the apex version of yourself, having $100 million in the bank, driving Ferraris. Like, that's the easy stuff to think about. But here's the actual goal, at least from my perspective. If I have kids, I want to be healthy enough to walk kids down the aisle and enjoy my life as I age. I want to be able to go out to ice cream on a summer night where you get to sit outside. It's warm, beautiful night. You get to realize life is pretty great. I want to have the energy to play the sports that I love. I want to have the flexibility to go on a vacation that I work so hard to go on and enjoy the food that I eat when I'm there, right? The goal is to build a life you love, not to build a box you have to live in that you hate. So that's how I'm going to end the show. Build a life you love. Don't build a box that you have to live in that you hate. So that's it. I'm Dr. Brad. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please leave comments. Please subscribe. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Super thankful to have you here. We'll talk to you guys later.